It was supposed to be an easy job. The house was enormous, standing alone at the edge of a quiet, gated community. Inside, luxury was everywhere: marble floors, chandeliers, and rooms so spacious they felt empty despite their extravagant furnishings. The babysitter had done this job before. Watching over James, 7 years old, and Jessica, 5, was never difficult. Their parents were wealthy, often away, leaving the children in the care of hired help. That night, after putting the children to bed, she settled into the pool house, a cozy glass-walled structure just outside the main house. From there, she had a clear view of the vast backyard, the illuminated pool, and the back entrance. The intercom system allowed the children to reach her if they needed anything. An hour passed. Then, the intercom crackled to life. Jessica's small, shaky voice whispered, claiming she heard something in her room. The babysitter reassured her, dismissing it as the sounds of the old house settling. She checked the security system. Everything was locked. Still, a nagging unease settled in the pit of her stomach. Back in the kitchen, she poured herself a drink when she heard it, a floorboard creaking from down the hallway. She froze. The house was supposed to be empty except for her and the children. Listening intently, she heard nothing else. Maybe it was just her imagination. "10." The intercom buzzed again. This time, there was no voice. Just breathing. Slow, deep, unnatural breathing. A shiver ran down her spine. Someone was inside the house. Steeling herself, she turned toward the hallway. Through the large kitchen window, she saw it, movement. A figure, partially obscured by the reflection of the lights, standing just beyond the glass. Her pulse quickened. Whoever it was, they weren't supposed to be there. Before she could react, Jessica's scream tore through the intercom speaker. Panic gripped her as she bolted toward the children's rooms. In the dim light of the hallway, shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally. The door to Jessica's room was ajar, swinging slightly as if recently disturbed. Inside, the children wären Tiere. The bed was empty, the sheets rumpled. Then she spotted them. James and Jessica huddled in the closet, their wide, terrified eyes locked onto something behind her. She turned just in time to see a figure in the doorway. A man. Unkempt, gaunt, his face twisted into something between a grin and a snarl. He took a slow step forward. Without thinking, she grabbed the children and ran. Down the hallway, through the living room, fumbling with the back door. Behind her, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. The lock gave way, and they burst outside, sprinting toward the pool house. Heart pounding, she slammed the door shut, locking it. The glass walls offered no protection, only a clear view of the intruder as he stepped onto the patio. He stopped, head tilting slightly, watching them. Then, he moved toward the pool house door, testing the handle. Red and blue lights flooded the yard as sirens screamed in the distance. The man turned sharply, disappearing into the darkness just as the police arrived. They never found out how he got in. The doors had been locked. The windows unbroken. But in the basement, officers discovered something chilling, a small hidden space behind the shelves. A nest of blankets, half-eaten food, and a crude drawing of the house. Someone had been living there, watching, waiting. The babysitter never returned. The forest stretched endlessly, a dark sea of twisted limbs and gnarled roots. The man arrived just before dusk, his truck kicking up dust as he pulled into the clearing. The air smelled of damp earth and pine, and a thick silence draped over the landscape like a shroud. His beagle, Reggie, leapt from the passenger seat, nose twitching at the crisp autumn air. Setting up camp was a practiced ritual. The tent pitched, firewood gathered, a fishing pole propped up by the lake's edge. As the last sliver of sun dipped below the horizon, the man settled by the fire, watching the flames dance and listening to the distant hoot of an owl. There was something profoundly peaceful about being alone in the wild. Then, a sound. A rustling beyond the tree line. The man stiffened, glancing at Reggie, who sat alert, ears pricked forward. The wind? A deer? He told himself it was nothing. Yet, a quiet unease began creeping along his spine. He ignored it, convincing himself that the only thing in these woods was the solitude he sought. But as he walked to check his fishing line, he noticed something odd. His tent flap, securely zipped minutes ago, was now slightly open, the fabric shifting lightly in the breeze. A shiver ran through him. Had he left it that way? No, he was sure he hadn't.
Reggie let out a low growl. Eyes locked on the black void of the forest.
The man felt the hair on his arms rise. He reached into his backpack, gripping the cold steel of his hunting knife. It was probably nothing. But nothing had a way of feeling like something when you were alone in the dark. Night settled heavily around him.
The fire burned low, casting long, flickering shadows.
Then came the sound again, soft, deliberate. Not the mindless shuffle of an animal, but the careful, calculated steps of something aware of its own presence. It moved just beyond the fire's reach, staying in the safety of darkness. Reggie whined, ears pinned back. Then, a new noise. A whistle. Not a melody, but something sharp, unnatural. The man's blood ran cold. He had camped alone dozens of times, heard the usual symphony of the wild. This was different. This was wrong. He forced himself to breathe, to steady his racing heart. The whistle came again, closer now. Then the snap of a twig, the unmistakable sound of movement just beyond the tree line. He gritted his teeth, trying to make sense of it. A person? But why linger unseen? Why whistle like that? He called out.
Hey!
No answer. Just the whistling growing fainter, as if it were retreating, drawing him in. He stayed put, gripping his knife tighter. Reggie barked sharply, but the sound was swallowed by the vast emptiness of the woods. Then came the scream. It sliced through the night, shrill and blood-curdling, not far from his camp. A woman's scream, no, something pretending to be one. It rose and fell in a grotesque imitation of human agony.
The monk breath hitched.
Every primal instinct screamed at him to run. He snatched his flashlight, sweeping the beam wildly across the trees. Nothing. The scream echoed once more, then cut off abruptly, leaving a deafening silence in its wake. The night felt deeper, heavier, as if the darkness itself were watching him. He moved fast, grabbing his keys, stuffing his gear haphazardly into his pack. Reggie danced anxiously at his feet. He didn't look back as he threw open the truck door, shoving the dog inside before slamming it shut. The engine roared to life, and he peeled out of the clearing, headlights slicing through the endless dark. Only when he reached the main road did he risk a glance in the rearview mirror. For a split second, just before the trees swallowed the road behind him, he thought he saw something standing at the edge of the woods. Tall, unmoving, watching. He never went back.